I want to share with us a few thoughts, mainly from Luke chapter 18. I pick up at verse 1. And verse 1 says, He spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought always to pray and not to faint. So the purpose of his parable is to say to them, and by extension to us, that men ought always to pray and not to faint. In other words, don't get tired of praying. Don't get weary of praying. And this is the purpose of this parable that he's giving. You ought to pray always and don't get tired of it. Don't faint. And so he goes off and he says, there was in a city a judge which feared not God, neither regarded man. So he's first of all establishing that this is not a godly person. This is not a Christian. This is not somebody who is interested in God. This is a worldly person. He doesn't have any regard for God nor man. He's all about himself. And there was a widow in that city, and she came unto him, saying, Avenge me of mine adversary. And he would not for a while. Now he's a judge, so he's in a high position, and the widow comes to him and says, well, probably somebody has been molesting me or somebody has done me wrong, and I want justice. I want justice, and you're the judge, and I'm coming to you to give me justice. And the judge, for a while, didn't pay attention to her, wasn't giving her the justice that she wanted. But afterward he said within himself, Though I fear not God, nor regard man, yet, because this widow troubleth me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Now, he's going to do what she asked because he wants to get rid of her, because he doesn't want her to keep on bothering him. She's asking for justice, and he's not inclined to do anything about it. But he doesn't want her to keep on at him, and he feels that she's going to keep on coming until he stops, until he gives in to her. So she keeps on coming, and he said, I need to get rid of this. I need to do that. So Jesus uses this for an illustration to say, he says in verse 6, hear what the unjust judge says. And shall not God avenge his own elect, which cry day and night unto him, though he bear long with them? In other words, this is an unjust judge. He's not a godly person. And if he is going to give this woman the justice she is demanding, then what about God, who is just? What about God, who loves mercy? What about God, who cares about our needs? So verse 8, he says, I tell you, that he, that's God, will avenge them speedily. I pause in the middle of this verse because there's something else coming, but let me just finish establishing that he says here that look at how the unjust judge deals with this woman because of his own selfishness, because he doesn't want to be bothered. And how much more will God, who loves justice and mercy and who loves people, how much more will he gladly, speedily do for his people? And then this last part of the verse, nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? This little part of the verse can be sometimes troublesome to people. What is he saying? What is he saying? That faith is going to be a scarce commodity when he comes? Maybe. But he is here establishing that God is far more willing to do for us, give us justice, give us mercy, give us love, give us hope, give us peace. God wants to do that for us. And he's making the point that the only thing that would prevent that from happening is if we don't have faith. If we don't have faith. So when the Son of Man cometh, will he find faith in the earth? Will there be people who are waiting patiently, because this is what we need to look at. He's establishing something. He uses this to talk about having faith, about praying always and not fainting from verse 1. And then he goes right to the second coming, when the Son of Man cometh. And it's saying to me that he's saying something about that time when he's coming, about the state of waiting. Because, Peter talks about it and he says, there shall come in the last days scoffers, saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were. So there will come a time, Jesus told about it in the parable of the 10 virgins, that the bridegroom, while the bridegroom tarried, they slept. There is going to be a period before Christ comes, and perhaps it is now, that there seems to be a cooling off, a laxness among the people who are waiting, a giving up. So many people are turning to atheism now. People who were once supposedly godly people committed to Christianity are becoming scoffers. Why? Because my Lord delays his coming. Because they are not like this importunate widow who says, I am not going to stop until I get justice. We've seen in Jamaica when they have protests on the street, and one of the catchphrases of the protests is, we want justice. They have the placard saying, we want justice. And that's what the world is saying. We want justice. But most times when they have these protests in the streets, they last a day or two, maybe 3, and then they stop. They get no justice, maybe. Most of the times nothing happens, but they no longer can carry on. And Jesus is saying, for us, his people, there should never be such a backing off. We should be there, persistent. So we have been praying. Our prayer list is there before us. And I think sometimes we become a little bit, oh well, that's probably not going to happen. Maybe it's not God's will, and so I'm going to stop praying about that. And so we move on to something else. We have another prayer. We have something else to talk about. But Jesus is here saying to us, don't become weary. Don't faint in your hopes. There's a verse I want us to look at too in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 to 9. It says, be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. And I can translate that to say, if you don't have faith, you're going to reap what you sow. If you don't believe, then you're not going to get anything. So you pray and you don't really believe, and you say, oh well, if it is God's will, it will happen. If it is not his will, it won't happen. So God, if it is your will. And then I'm gone about my business. I prayed, now it's up to God. You do your part, God, I've done my part. But if it's important enough to me, I am not going to do that. I'm going to keep at it, because that's what Jesus just said to me in Luke 18. That's what he said. If it means something to you, you're not going to be faint. Verse 8 says, he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that sows to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And that's where we are. So let us not be weary in well-doing. Let us not faint, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Is it God's will? Well, if we don't know God's will yet, then there's something wrong with our relationship. And is it God's will for me to be saved? Absolutely. I don't have to ask him if it is his will. I know. Is it God's will for me to preach the gospel? It is. I know that. Is it God's will for me to be healthy? I know that. The Bible tells me so. So I am praying according to his will. And if I'm not seeing the answer, I should be like that importunate widow. And I'm speaking to myself. I'm speaking to all of us. I should be there, persistent about the things that mean something to me. So my sister is sick there now. And what do I want? I want my sister to be healed. And therefore, my prayers should not be, oh, in the morning I pray about it and then I'm all about my business. And maybe I remember at night before I go to bed and I do something, I need to be praying about it. God, I'm going to bother you about this one, but I want my sister to be healed. I don't want her to suffer and die. Oh, she's going to die one day, I know that. But for right now, I am asking you, just like how Martha asked Jesus about Lazarus, and Jesus took him from the grave. So the point is it important? Is it important enough for you to keep at it? Then keep at it. And don't be weary, don't faint. I'm going to be quoting from Spurgeon, Charles H. Spurgeon. He says, we have many upon the earth who pray, but where are those whose continual coming is sure to prevail? I thank God that the prayer meetings of this church are well sustained by praying men and women. And we could be talking about us. We have prayer meetings regularly. So I thank God that the prayer meetings of our group, our fellowship, are well sustained by praying men and women. I love it when we get together and pray. But he says, where are the Jacob-like wrestlers? I'm afraid that it cannot even be said of many churches that their prayer meetings are at all what they should be. For among many, the gathering for prayer is despised. And men say it is only a prayer meeting. Anybody notice that around here? Our prayer meetings are scantily attended. But we have people who will attend the regular meetings on Sabbaths and so on much more bountifully. But it's just a prayer meeting. They're not going there. Because prayer is not important enough to many people. I continue reading from Spurgeon. Brethren, I will not judge with severity. But where are those who offer effectual, fervent, much prevailing prayer? I know that there are many here who do not neglect private and family devotion, and who pray constantly for the prosperity of the Church of Jesus Christ and for the salvation of souls. But even to you, I put the question, if the Son of Man were to come now, how many would he find among us that pray with a distinct, vehement, irresistible importunity of faith? Where is the Elijah on Mount Carmel who will bring down the rain upon these parched fields? Where is the church that will pray down a Pentecost? I will not decry my brethren in the ministry, nor speak little of deacons and elders and other distinguished servants of my Lord. But still, my brothers and sisters, taking us all round, how few of us know what it is to pray the heaven-overcoming prayer which is needful for this crisis. How few of us go again and again and again to God with tears and cries and heartbreaking pleading as for our own lives, for the increase of Zion and the saving of the ungodly. If the Son of Man comes, will he find much of such praying faith among our churches? Ah, me, that I should ask such a question, but I do ask it, hanging my head in shame. The importunate widow waited with strong resolve and never ceased through sullen doubt. If the judge had not yet heard her, she was sure he must hear her, for she had made up her mind that she would plead until he heard. A waiting faith is rare. Men can believe for a time, but to hold out through the long darkness is another matter. When the Son of Man cometh, will he find many who can believe in a delaying God and plead a long-dated promise, waiting but never getting weary? When we have a revival and everybody is saying, Hosanna, Certain eager folk are sure to be in the front. But when the popular voice growls out, "Crucify him," where are they? Where are even Peter and John and the rest of the disciples? Learn to plead when no answer comes, and to press on when repulsed. This is the test of faith. It is so easy to be a believer when everybody believes, but to be a believer when nobody else believes, and to be nevertheless a firm believer because nobody believes with you, this is the mark of the man valiant for truth and loyal to Jesus. End quote. So, brothers and sisters, when the Son of Man comes, if he is to find faith in the earth, let it be me. Let it be you.